Are you tired of marital breakdowns that erode at your physical and emotional intimacy in your marriage? Today's episode, we're talking about all the ways that couples unknowingly allow external influences to erode the most precious bond inside marriage.
We are providing practical biblical strategies to understand the breakdowns and work toward unity and lasting intimacy in your marriage. First, we have to start with the foundation of marriage and what God's design is for marriage.
I was just going to say, if you're just tuning in, we have been talking about the foundation in a lot of episodes previously in season 5.
That's right.
But you're going to do a recap.
Yeah, specifically season 5, episode 1 and 2 will give you the foundation of God's design for sex and sexuality. And then right now, what I want to do is just give a quick recap that God designed man and woman to leave mother and father, come together, cleave together as one, and then create a marriage. And the marriage covenant is a metaphor of God's covenant with us. That is ever faithful, always there, never leave, never forsake. And then the marriage that we have is a covenant metaphor of that.
Right. It gives us an example of what we're really striving for. And there are things that come in the way of reflecting and mirroring God's covenant.
There are common intimacy invaders.
And killers.
Let's talk about what they are.
Yes. So first we need to identify what are these things, because the enemy wants to divide you specifically in your sexuality inside marriage. He wants to put a wedge there because he knows it's a deep pain point in our lives.
Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 15 says, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom."
Yeah, I think I love that verse, and we have used that verse for our own marriage to identify foxes. But what I think is interesting is it's not this big burly bear that just comes like romping through the vineyard, because that would be obvious, right? Instead, it's these slight, sly foxes, sneaky
That's
foxes.
Right. Yeah.
Things like harsh words and neglect, or maybe it's a boundary that's just slightly crossed. Those are the things that we need to identify so we can put a stop to it.
I like how it doesn't say ignore the foxes. It says catch the foxes. You know, this requires intentionality to identify what is nibbling at the connection of our marriage.
Well, let's just identify a few that were in our marriage so that you can have a really good example what to look for in your marriage. So the first one I want to talk about, I think this is the most common fox in the marriage, and it's the digital fox. That is, your phones come to bed with you, you're scrolling at dinner, at the dinner table instead of having connection with your spouse, or it's, I just have one more email that I need to respond to instead of leaning into connection with our spouse. And that digital fox can show up in a lot of different ways.
As you were saying that, I was thinking we are always communicating, and sometimes we're not communicating with our words. We're communicating with our actions. And what I see is when I'm on my phone scrolling at dinner, I imagine what you're feeling is I'm not important.
I'm not a priority.
And so we're communicating. If you're in your bed on your phone and you're not communicating with your spouse, they feel like they're not a priority. They're not significant in your life. Mm-hmm. There are times and places that we could use our digital things.
This can apply not just to phone, but TV. I mean,
just any distractions,
work.
Right?
Yes.
Let's talk about the venting fox. So sharing your spouse's flaws. Let me start that over. Let's talk about the venting fox. Sharing your spouse's flaws or your marriage dirt with a friend, parent, or coworker instead of talking to your spouse.
I used to do that. I would go to work and be like, girl, let me just tell you what he did to me, how he treated me.
I did
Can
too.
you believe that?
I did too. I thought that was okay and normal to complain about the things that you are not doing right in my marriage.
Right.
And when I would do that, my buddies or the people would hear me would be like, yeah, that is wrong.
Well, the reason it's a fox is because it's extremely hurtful and damaging to intimacy. If your spouse ever finds out that you've been talking to friends and complaining, and it is gossip, it will get back to them eventually, and it is extremely damaging.
It's a confidence killer.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Or some people would even say loss of trust when that happens.
Right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is, and this is a big one too. All of these are big, but each one we're talking about is separate and it's big.
And these are these are ours, things we've experienced in our life.
The comparison fox. This is when you're measuring behind the scenes reality against someone else's social status or what they have or what their marriage looks like in comparison. And that is a trap because it either leads you feeling defeated because you don't measure up or prideful that you're better. So there is no win when we compare. Or it could look like disappointment that you're not where you are supposed to be in comparison to another couple and where their journey is.
This is something that's really intriguing because we can see people out in public and they have their fig leaves up, their walls up, and they look good. They look like their marriage is good. They're smiling. They're happy. We have no idea what goes on behind people's closed doors. None at all. However, Adele and I are in the space of working with couples where we get to see what happens behind those closed doors. And it is raw and real and
painful.
Like, there's a lot of pain.
Yes, loneliness. Yeah.
So there's no reason to compare it. That is a thief of joy.
Yes.
Comparison is a thief. Let's talk about the scorecard fox. Keeping a mental list of chores, mistakes, or past arguments to use as ammunition later.
Receipts.
So one of my love languages is acts of service. And I would go do the dishes, I would do the laundry, I would go clean the house, and then I would, in my mind, hold that against you that I've done those things and you're not.
Mm-hmm. Right, or it could be pulling up past mistakes that one made to hold it over your head. Like, you're never going to change. You never. Those will kill intimacy as well. The next one is the secretive fox. These are small hidden purchases, deleted texts, private friendships that you wouldn't want your spouse to see, and more. We're not going to go into all the little secrets, but any secret inside the marriage is a fox, and it will kill your intimacy.
I thought you were going to share something about I go to the store, I pick up some things, I put them in the back of the car, and I don't bring them in the house until later.
Oh, I did that a lot. I would wait until you were gone to bring my bags in and then put everything away so no evidence is seen.
Yeah. So how much did you spend on that? Oh, it was on sale.
Practically free.
Yeah. The exhaustion fox. This is when we are overcommitting to work, kids, hobbies, until we have nothing in the tank left for intimacy. I'm feeling that way right now this season of life, is that I feel exhaustion.
Yeah, apparently, I'm recognizing it right this minute too. Apparently, we have an exhaustion fox that is getting in our marriage.
I can feel it. You and I have had more arguments in the last 3 or 4 weeks or so than we've had in years.
Yeah, we're coming up on the end of February as we're recording this, and we have had no spare time, no rest days in the month of February, and we're feeling it. And the enemy knows it, and he waits for those vulnerable, weak spots. Oh, they're really tired. They're really depleted. Now is the time I'm going to drive that division. And you and I haven't been our best selves. We haven't had as much patience.
Yeah.
We've gotten in more arguments because of that, because we're just tired and exhausted. And now this, Are you kidding me? And that just further makes us exhausted. Because dealing with arguments is heavy and weighted inside the marriage.
And that's not my heart. When we're having these arguments together, I feel like you're on the other team. It's hard for me to see truth and reality. And it is not my heart to be defensive or to be passive aggressive or to stonewall or withdraw from you. That's not my heart. And yet I feel like you're judging me, or I feel not good enough, or I feel like a failure around our conversations, and it feels real.
It sure does.
And I know that's the exhaustion, because when I'm getting depleted, I don't have the reserves for the intimacy that we normally would have.
That's right. Right. And then you wonder why when you make a bid or an invitation to physical intimacy, I'm like, are you kidding me? Where am I going to find that energy?
Exhaustion.
Yeah, it kills the intimacy. The last one we're going to talk about is the sarcastic fox. Do you fall into this category where you make jokes or pokes to highlight your spouse's insecurities, which I'm telling you, it slowly kills the safety in the bedroom?
I would be like, why can't you take a joke? I'm just kidding with you.
Because you're not.
I'm just teasing.
You are not teasing when you are tearing down at my insecurities that I already have. You're making it worse. Yeah, there's no jokes about that.
Sarcasm is horrible. It is definitely an intimacy killer. This question is for you. Out of the 7 foxes that we identified, which one most resonates with you? We would love for you to put it in the comments right now. It would be very relatable to other people, and it will help you in your own marriage to be able to look at it, identify it. Now you can do something about it.
You can catch it.
That's right. Catch the foxes.
Because it's not about ignoring them.
No.
If you ignore them, they will eat all your fruit. Like I imagine if we had a winery that had a vineyard full of luscious grapes and we found out that foxes were getting in, we would be setting some traps.
Ooh, yeah.
To catch those little boogers, because they have no business eating the luscious fruit. And you want that fruit. I just want to encourage you, if you are liking this episode so far, please go hit that thumbs up, that like button, because that helps us get this information out to more couples who really need it. And right now, we are very clear that YouTube has been shadowing us from reaching more couples based off of the fact that we're talking about sex and God. And apparently, they don't like that. So you can help us by just hitting that thumbs up, and that just overrides that shadow so that more people get to see this video. It's important.
Yes, and not apparently. They said that they're doing it.
They admitted
told us.
it. Yes.
They admitted
we have
they're
been
doing it.
flagged.
Right.
So it is, you know what? I really feel like that is spiritual warfare too, that YouTube is actually preventing us from getting this message out. And that's so sad to me because it's such a good message that couples need about intimacy.
So help us out with that. Let's talk about how to build your marital fortress with practical boundary strategies, because the enemy, he's always trying to build strongholds and fortresses in our mind with his lies. Wouldn't it make sense, just like you were talking about catching these foxes, wouldn't it make sense that we have how-tos to build our marital fortress?
That's right, a healthy fortress. So let's just talk about what are boundaries for, because it would be important that we have boundaries around our marriage that protect the marriage intimacy, both emotionally and physically. And I want to define that boundaries are not meant for one spouse or the other. They're meant for the enemy, to keep the enemy out of your marriage. And that is just by creating guidelines that both spouses agree to and have buy-in, that we need this boundary to keep the enemy from sneaking in to our marriage.
That right there is the reason why boundaries are not meant for one spouse to be accountable to the other spouse in the boundary, because it will make it a parent-child relationship.
Right. It just won't work. And so, the having the power of no and learning to politely when there are external demands that come our way, we learn how to politely say no. I'm not going to say yes to that, because
Even the
if I
good
say
stuff.
yes to that, I'm saying no to other things that are a priority. And I feel like that's where you and I have been having this conversation about this exhaustion fox. And we need to really identify what is our best yeses. Because right now, everything we're doing is all good things.
Right,
And
right,
I feel like
yes.
God has called us to a lot of those things, probably, if not all of them. But then checking ourselves about anything else that we say yes to is so important.
That's good. What is God? What are we doing for God that He has not called us to?
Right. Yeah, it's important to look at.
So we also want to create sacred spaces and times. So implementing things like phone-free zones when you're having dinner. What we recommend is when you go to bed at night, put your phones to sleep first in another room and then go to your bedroom. Your bedroom is really meant to be a sanctuary that is meant for sleeping and physical intimacy, and it would be great to keep your phones out of it. Another thing is scheduled intimacy dates. What gets scheduled gets done. And you may have great intentions to have great dates with your spouse. But if you don't have it scheduled, it's just a thought. And typically, we don't go through with those.
That's true. And it's important that we communicate with one voice, meaning we're in alignment with these boundaries. Like, we both agree, we're moving forward, and that just presents a united front to the world, to the enemy, to the kids, to friendships, to work, all of those things. It's important that we're united.
That's alignment. And you can get there through prayer. God, align our hearts with each other, with you. You want God's perspective. You want God's will. I mean, wouldn't that make sense? That when you're in God's will and you're in alignment with your spouse, there's blessings on the other side of that. But when we are not in alignment and we're not in alignment with God and His will, blessings are not there.
Right.
We are not living in His will or in His best will.
So with all of the foxes that we shared earlier, let's go back through just a few of them and share what would be a good boundary to prevent that fox from coming in.
Okay, we did talk about this a little bit, but let's go back to the digital foxes. So digital scrolling in bed or at dinner time rather than the connection that can take place between us. And the boundary can be, again, creating the sacred space. Maybe the bedroom's a phone-free zone. You can use the basket rule. Maybe it's like from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. All digital devices are cut off and we're spending time with the family then.
We try our best to do that when we're having family time, our phones are not on, or we have them on do not disturb, things like that, to protect that time. And it's
Another one,
worked really well.
it does. Another one that I am currently attempting is leaving my phone at home on Sundays.
It drives me nuts because I need it. I need you to write something down or call somebody or text somebody,
I
and you're
have
like,
people at church, they're wanting to change numbers or text me something, and I'm like, I don't have my phone.
let's talk about the complaining fox. So if you're complaining to a friend about your spouse, that's the fox. The boundary would be that you agree that your internal struggles stay between the two of you and your mentors and coaches only.
There you go.
Because that's important. We have had husbands and wives who are currently working with us that when one spouse comes to us and says, hey, this is what's going on, the other one is offended. But your coaches and your mentors are meant to help support you. Those are the people you actually need to be sharing with so that you can get a different perspective, hopefully God's perspective on how to move forward. But it is a problem. If it is a problem in the marriage, the solution should stay inside the marriage circle and both agree to it.
And the people you are going to be sharing this with will be people that love you, they love Jesus, and they are for your marriage.
And that excludes like friendships, unless they are in a healthy spot to be able to speak truth in life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So next is the social media comparison. You see a couple enjoying vacation online, and suddenly your spouse is not doing enough. So listen, here's a good tip. Get off social media. That's a good tip. Or maybe it is blocking something that is stealing your joy, because comparison is the thief of joy. Social media is designed to give you the highlight reels of people's lives. And when you are living in misery and you're scrolling, or is it called doomsday scrolling or something like that? Man, it just sucks the joy right out of it. How many times have you finished scrolling and you're like, I feel so filled with joy right now, I can scream.
Or I can't tell you how many times I've been in a good mood, go to social media to scroll, and now I'm in a worse mood than I was before I started. It's a fox. All right, so let's talk
I'm
about
interested to hear what you're going to say about this one.
the work, allowing work or emails to bleed into your connection time. That's the fox. So the boundary would be a 10-minute decompression period, maybe when one or both spouses get home, before engaging together as a spouse. I think this is so necessary. However, like, our dynamic is totally different. We don't leave the house to go to work. But you and I need that decompression time sometimes. So we find ways to separate ourselves to be able to decompress before re-entering into the family.
Take a shower, go for a walk if you work at home. One of the husbands that I was just talking to recently, he says he comes home from work, and when he gets home, he goes in the home, and then it is like there's this chaos that happens, and then he's mean and rude to his family after that. And so we talked through, how do you get out of your car when you get home and walk in? And we came up with a new plan. First is, on the way home, make it intentional. He listens to worship music now. He listens to preaching podcasts. He's filling his mind with God's truth, or he's praying. Those are the three things he's doing on the way home. Mm-hmm. Then when he gets home, he parks his car. He gets out, opens his trunk, and metaphorically takes the junk and puts it in the trunk, closes it, and then walks into his house. So he can be present. He's there and available, and not considering the day and thinking his family is a nuisance. And that has reframed his mind. Now his kids don't feel like,
oh no, daddy's home.
yeah, it feels like dad is gone all day long, and then when he comes home, he hates me. Mm-hmm. That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, instead they get to see his best self coming home, because he prepared himself and has a boundary set in place.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Let's talk about how we reinforce these walls that we're creating, because there's intimacy through the daily habits that we're going to have.
Mm-hmm. The first thing that comes to my mind is that we need to build confidence in ourselves and our spouse. Psalms 118, 8-9 says, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people." Ooh, that's a good one. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. So what that's saying is, God is the only one who's trustworthy.
Amen.
That we can really depend on to be our refuge. So go to him. Don't take your junk and your hurt to your spouse. They are not your refuge. However, once I go to the Lord and I get the healing, then I can come to you in a safe place. And that is a intimacy builder.
Integrity. Integrity is important. You are your words and you are your actions, and they need to consistently line up with your identity. Your identity is you're made in the image of God. And sometimes you and I don't believe that, and sometimes you and I don't act like that. Integrity is really important, that we are whole and complete individuals in a relationship. Otherwise, I'm going to be codependent, and I'm going to need you to complete some part of me, and I'm going to lose confidence in myself, and I'm going to lose confidence in others when I'm not being a person of integrity. Next.
Oh, I was just going to say that humans are completely untrustworthy.
Yes.
However, we can still have confidence and be untrustworthy humans because we fail.
We do.
We're not perfect.
We do.
And that confidence that you're talking about there is so important. So important. And it comes through showing up with integrity.
Thanks for saying that, because doesn't that make sense that whenever you say you're going to do something in life, let's just use an example. Every morning at 6 a.m., I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to work out 5 days a week, and I'm determined to do that. And then I'm going to eat healthy. I'm determined to do that. But then I don't. I don't go to the gym. And then I don't eat healthy. I eat the burger, I eat the chips, I eat the sweets. It would make sense that your intentions don't line up with your words and actions. And because of that, everything I'm saying is subconscious. You lose confidence in yourself. And when you lose confidence in yourself, it is actually easier for you not to follow through with your words and actions the next time, because you just don't have confidence in yourself anymore. And as that keeps going, you lose more and more confidence. But that's not all. Your spouse and your family around you, they lose confidence in you because they're not going to show up. They said they're going to get up and go to the gym every morning at 6. They're not. In fact, I'm getting up to go to work. They're still in bed.
So then when we have a conversation and I express I really want you to pursue my heart, and you say, I'm committed to pursuing your heart, in the back of my mind, I'm like, we'll see. Because you say that about other things.
And I haven't done it.
Yes.
Okay. Next is taking personal responsibility for yourself and being a person of integrity. It does increase the confidence around you. Personal responsibility means that I am responsible and you are responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors. The things you think, the things you do, the feelings you have is all your responsibility. Other people can't make you feel a certain way. Now, you may feel a certain way around people. You may feel miserable around certain people, but it all has to do with how you feel and the things that you have going on inside of your heart, because out of your heart is the wellspring of life, according to Proverbs 4:23. So we want to take personal responsibility. Here's what normally happens is after Adam and Eve sinned and they went and hid, God came to them, and Adam is blaming God and the woman. Eve is blaming the serpent. What would be possible if Adam and Eve was like, God, I was wrong. I was wrong. You said not to eat the fruit, and I did. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. That is personal responsibility. We need to have that, and it requires a humble heart to have personal responsibility.
Does. So let's talk about another daily habit, and this goes into sexual wholeness and integrity around that.
The enemy has a scheme for your sex and your sexuality and who you are. He wants to confuse you about those ideas, about what sex and sexuality really means. Once again, go back to episode 1 and 2 of season 5.
He wants to confuse you and take you out in your sexual integrity. Like, he's not just about putting a few cracks there. He wants to take you out and then fill you with confusion about what's even real. And that's why it's important. We must get our perspective from the Bible. We cannot go off of what the world says, because the Bible is what reframes and renews our mind that is based on God's wisdom and guidance. Like, it's already there for us. So we have to go to that.
The reason we don't have integrity or personal responsibility or humility is because we're operating out of the wrong view of our identity. When we operate out of the identity of who you are and whose you are, that you are a son or a daughter of the Almighty King and you're made in his image, and if you have Jesus in your heart, you have all the fruit of the Spirit, that you have power, love, and a sound mind. And when we come from that identity, we can have integrity, humility, repentance, personal responsibility. But when we're coming from an identity, a false identity of shame or fear, we're not. We're going to blame. We're going to shift the focus somewhere else. We're going to lose confidence all around us.
We have several more really important parts that are going to help you fortify the intimacy in your marriage. But before we get there, if you haven't already hit the like button, go ahead and do that right now. Hit that like button. Let us know, hey, I'm tracking with this conversation. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you're getting so far. So the next one, which I think is important, is that we prioritize connection. Because when we're prioritizing connection with each other, that fosters the ability to have deep conversations, having active listening with one another, and that is what develops intimacy. So once we've identified the foxes and we've got them out of the way, now it's about prioritizing the intimacy and the connection that we have. And then the other thing that's really important is sacrificial love. And we've been talking about that throughout this entire season, that is what gives you the ability to keep the spark alive, and it reinforces exclusivity inside this relationship. So important that we do that, and we have sacrificial gestures and love that we show to each other.
Let's talk about 2 ways to protect your marriage through community and prayer. So community, 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. I want you to consider surrounding yourself with the same sex accountability partners, people who love Jesus, love you, they're for your marriage. Have a community around you, a small group that you can do life with regularly, that you can share your issues, that you can come and create this intimate gathering together. Maybe it's in your church, maybe it's in a home group that you can be with. The next is the power of praying together. You know, I've heard it said, this statistic by Dr. James Dobson, that 1 out of 2 couples statistically will get a divorce in the worldly sense. That's the normal statistic. But imagine this. 1 out of 1,552 couples get a divorce that pray together. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
There's power in prayer. We're only given 2 main offensive weapons in Ephesians 6. Verse 17 is the sword, which is your word of God, and verse 18 is prayer. Prayer is powerful.
Yes, prayer is actually what activates our weapons. That's why it is a weapon, because when I'm praying, I am actually going to battle. I'm putting myself on the front lines with the weapons that God has given us. And I just think that's important because we operate in the supernatural for the natural. And that took me a while to get my mind wrapped around. Like when I pray, I am in a supernatural realm to affect the natural realm. Is powerful.
I love that you said that, because it is hard to wrap my mind around, because I can see natural, I can't see supernatural. Mm-hmm. And it requires something extra for me to consider supernatural when I'm praying, when I'm considering God, when I'm considering spiritual warfare.
Yes. And you talked about praying together as a couple and how powerful that is statistically. But it also allows us to pray against the enemy together and pray for aligned hearts, like we mentioned earlier. And that is key. We have to do that. And it also allows us to invite God's protection and guidance into our marriage.
The only way to effectively do this is to live a spirit-led life. The next 2 episodes, we're going to go into this even more, but Romans 8, verses 5 and 6, Galatians 5, verses 16 and 17, and 22 and 23 gives great examples of how to live a spirit-led life. Because when we live spirit-led, we can combat the enemy with Jesus' authority and Jesus' power, which is the only power that we have. But we have to, according to James 4:7, humble ourselves to him, and then we can resist the enemy, and then he will flee.
All right, so we talked about a lot of things, but what I want to leave you with is that when you really protect your intimacy from the enemy, who is the real enemy, here's what you have access to in the blessings that come over your marriage. So the first one is exponential joy of exclusive intimacy. That is a depth of connection that others miss out on. That's really special. And then it also allows you to model a healthy, biblically grounded marriage to your children, community, friends, other people, family members. And it also allows you to live out God's design and a blessing of a thriving, protected, and honoring marital bond is there. And that's, I think, where we are, even though we have identified we have a fox that we need to catch, we still have access to these blessings from the Lord of exponential joy with exclusive intimacy, because we've done this work to really eradicate the enemy from our marriage.
I like those blessings.
Me too.
On today's episode, what we've talked about is there can be a gap between our sex and sexuality, our physical intimacy, and our emotional intimacy in marriage. And there are foxes intentionally from the enemy that is coming in slyly, slowly,
sneakily,
stealing away our fruit. And we need to catch those foxes, identify what they are, what is coming in behind your marriage, stealing away the intimacy, identify those, and really address them. It's important that we have community around us, that we are praying together in the marriage, that we are putting boundaries up in our marriage to be able to keep the good thing in and keep the bad things out. Really important. And then as we go into the next two episodes, you're going to even learn more about how do we do this with power, living a spirit-led life. Mm-hmm. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about
traits of a godly husband.
Thank you. Traits of a godly husband, even if you don't have the example from your own earthly father.
That's right. And we just want to thank you for joining us on this journey all about pursuing supernatural oneness. We've really enjoyed this season, and we have a few more episodes till we get to the close. But like you've heard us say, we're on a mission to get this message out to more couples, and you can help us by leaving a review on our podcast, subscribing, liking, and please share this video with your friends and family, because God has something for them in this video that they may not see until they watch it. And so share it with your friends.
We have created this video for you to watch next. It is 3 keys to building boundaries and rebuilding trust in your marriage.
Yeah, watch it right here. And stay for the bloops.
Stay for the what?
The bloops.
The bloops.
Because there were a few.
Toodaloo's.